Hello, friends, and welcome back to Tutti Talks, the podcast where music and conversation come together. I'm your host, Aveline Shinky, and today I'm joined by my fellow co-hosts, John and Nick, and we are here at the Decoda Chamber Music Festival in North Carolina. We've got a really special guest with us today, bassoonist, educator, and composer Brad Balliett. Brad has built a unique and inspiring career in the music world. He performs with ensembles like Decoda and the Metropolitan Opera, teaches, composes original works, and does extensive community outreach, including bringing music into prisons and other community spaces. In this episode, we're going to explore Brad's journey, how he got started on bassoon, the role chamber music has played in shaping his musicianship, why he's so passionate about education and outreach, and how he balances performing, teaching, composing, and service work. We'll also dive into how he creates new opportunities and what advice he has for students looking to build a portfolio career today. Let's get started. First off, I want to turn our attention to just John and Nick. Could you guys just give a brief description of your background, where you go to school, all of those types of things?
Hello, I am John Kuntz. I am a cellist, and I attend the University of South Carolina, Columbia, where I major in cello performance and political science. And I've been playing for about 10 years, and my goals after graduating are some sort of probably post-grad degree in the political science arena or law school.
Hi, my name is Nick Fedorenko. I play the bassoon. I am going to be a junior at the Peabody Institute. I have been playing the bassoon for just about 5 years, half a decade, and my goals after I graduate is to continue going to school to get more degrees.
Awesome. Now I want to turn our attention to Brad, our special guest here today with us. And Brad, kind of the same thing. Could you walk us through a little bit of your background, where you got your degrees from, what you're pursuing now, things with Decoda, just kind of all of those things?
Sure thing. First, thanks for having me on Tutti Talks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, I'm a bassoonist. It's about a third of what I do in my career. I think of my career in 3 big chunks: bassoon performance, composing music, and doing this work, creative workshops in community settings. I've been playing the bassoon since I was 12 years old. Before that, I played saxophone, clarinet, and my first instrument was violin that I started in 3rd grade.
Really?
And played all the way through high school, although I stopped practicing the minute I got a bassoon. I knew right away that that was going to be the end point for me, instrument-wise. So I came up in the public school system in Westboro, Massachusetts. I'm a New Englander through and through. And after I graduated high school, I went to Harvard University to study music generally. I was practicing bassoon a lot, but there was not a performance degree program at Harvard. So everything I did with the bassoon was sort of on my own. I found my own teacher, I set up my own lessons, and that kind of thing. After undergrad, I went to Rice University to really hone my bassoon skills. And I give credit to my teacher there, Ben Kamens, for really whipping me into shape. And I'd say I really learned the bassoon there. After I finished at Rice, I played a year in the Houston Symphony. I was playing second bassoon on a 1-year contract. And then I moved to New York City to take part in a program called, at the time it was called The Academy, then later it was called Ensemble ACJW. And finally, the name I think they've settled on for good is Ensemble Connect, which is a cool fellowship program that places chamber musicians in the public school system in New York City. And that's where I got really my first big taste of what we call teaching artistry. That is bringing music education to various places with still an attitude of complete professionalism about performance, that those two aspects of your life are on equal footing. And it was through Ensemble Connect that Decoda began. It's made up of alums of that fellowship program. I stayed in New York when that fellowship ended, and I would say I am a freelance musician. I don't love that term. I prefer the term that you used when introducing me. I'm a musician with a portfolio career. And what that means is I get to choose what I want to do. And what I want to do is a lot of different things. I don't like doing the same thing day in, day out, week after week, month after month. So my life looks very different week to week, and I prefer it that way. And among the things I do as a portfolio musician is bassoon performance, including a lot of chamber music, but also playing in orchestras in New York and beyond. I've played years with the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. I play frequently in the Metropolitan Opera, the New York City Ballet, wherever they need bassoon, really. I spend a great deal of my time in prisons teaching composition, songwriting workshops, and other music-y stuff. And I write music, and that's something that I need to really set aside time for, because creative work is always the first thing to go when other things start encroaching on your time. So you got to be vigilant about making time for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that you really started to get into Ensemble Connect and things like that. How did that really lead you into the Decoda avenue and being more full-time with that and putting a lot more of your focus into that? And then also, how has chamber music shaped your overall musicianship through that?
Good questions, and a lot of questions in there. I got started doing this kind of teaching artistry work in graduate school through the program at Rice that's similar to things like the Gluck Fellowship at UCLA and at Juilliard. It was a little bit less comprehensive than that, and this whole idea of teaching artistry as a profession has really only come about in the music world in the last 15 or 20 years. So conservatories are just catching up with that now. And schools like the Peabody Institute, which is where I teach now, are really kind of leading the way in the professional field in offering courses that are specific about things like building your brand, grant writing, and other stuff that really sets the stage for a good career as a musician. But at Rice, they had programs where you could design interactive performances and put them into practice. And I thought, hey, this is fun, this is cool. And it was the teachers that were running that program that more or less insisted that I apply to this program. It wasn't on my radar. It wasn't something that I was fantasizing about. But when I got into the program and it was an opportunity to go to New York and do what seemed to me very interesting things, I took a chance on it. And that choice really has shaped the rest of my career. In Ensemble Connect, each fellow is placed in a New York City public school, and they work with the music teacher there. So you're designing sort of interesting, interactive lessons for me, it was elementary school students, while also taking a big bite out of the chamber music repertoire. So in a lot of ways, those two things were always connected in my mind. I had played plenty of chamber music before, but that fellowship was my first year where I was really pretty much only playing chamber music. And I loved so much about it, the sort of self-direction, the opportunity to choose what you wanted to play and how you wanted to play it, the flexibility, the mobility of the groups, the ability to play in a lot of different settings sort of on a moment's notice. And it just became something that I could see as a big part of my career.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's really cool that you had the opportunity to do that fellowship. Like, I'm sure that was a really big stepping stone in your career and things like that. That's just really cool to hear. What do you think, now that you've been through Decoda and you've been in it for a while, what do you think makes Decoda such a strong or meaningful program for musicians, for both members like yourself and for students?
I think Decoda's strength and its uniqueness comes from the fact that it's a collective. So there's a lot of different viewpoints, musicians that come from a lot of places. They all have this shared training through Ensemble Connect, although we are branching out from just Ensemble Connect now for membership in the group. But there are people who really focus on education. There are members that are in orchestras. There are members that are really part of, like, I don't know, what I would call the elite chamber music world, whatever that means. And it's those contrasting viewpoints that give a lot of perspective in the case of something like the Decoda Chamber Music Festival, where we're dealing with students with a really wide range of interests, career goals, and that kind of thing. So I think that's the strength of the group.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just being here at this festival throughout the course of these past couple days, I've really seen that come together with all of these students that are coming from across the country. It's just been so cool to collaborate with everybody. And I know for me personally, me and John are in a flute quartet by Mozart, and I've never been in something like that where you have something besides just strings and things like that. So it's really cool how you guys have implemented that throughout this festival. And I also really like how kind of throughout the whole program you guys have set up throughout the past couple of days, the pieces are kind of, I would say, very different throughout the two groups. Like, I would say the one group is very more modern and more new composers and things like that. And then you guys have also split off to more classical pieces. And it's just a really good, diverse spectrum. And I know I've really appreciated that at the festival. I don't know about you guys. What have been some of your, like, favorite things from the festival?
I get to play a lot of opera,
Yeah.
basically, which is fun. It's
Mhm.
new. And it's also interesting to see, because the two prominent composers I'm playing are Mozart, like you said, and Rossini, which Rossini was definitely influenced by the former a lot. So it's been interesting to try and incorporate and kind of cross styles, especially because the Rossini, my part's a lot more prominent. It's not like a continuo part as much as it is in the Mozart.
Mhm.
But both of those things have been very informative experiences for shaping my classical musicianship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, I definitely appreciate how Decoda isn't choosing very standard repertoire for our instrument groups and standard instrumentations. Never in my life would I thought I'd be playing a clarinet duet.
Yeah.
Well, at least in my collegiate career, and then playing a reed trio is also something that I have never really done before. I've basically been playing wind quintet music my whole chamber music career, which has been very short-lived so far, but it's been very nice to learn these different composers and play this music where I feel like I have more of like a presence rather than I'm playing in like a wind quintet where I'm a little more, can hide a little more. Playing in a smaller group definitely feels a lot different to me, and I really appreciate Decoda throwing me in that
Yeah.
side of the pool.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Brad, did you have anything to do with Nick stretching his legs this week?
I make Nick stretch his legs plenty at the Peabody Institute. No, the programming was done by our two artistic directors, who you can hear on another episode of Tutti Talks.
Mm-hmm.
But both of the things you're talking about reflect values of Decoda. Because we're a collective, it's a great opportunity to explore this mixed instrumentation repertoire. Like, we have the capacity to program string quartets, and we often do, but it's so much more interesting to program things like Beethoven septet, pieces where the strings and winds finally get a chance to come together. And it's just a fact, there are plenty of string quartets out there. We don't need to retread that same ground, but there's less chamber groups exploring that repertoire that brings together instruments from the different families. And of course, we love new music to pieces, but we're not really a new music ensemble. So it's nice to have that balance, and we hope that the juxtaposition of those pieces mutually sheds light on each other. And I would only add that Decoda Chamber Music Festival seems to attract what I would call cool musicians. Musicians that are not so laser focused on a single goal, which of course I completely respect. And if the one thing you want to do in life is play in an orchestra, it requires a single-mindedness of purpose that may actually preclude you from exploring the many, many other rich terrain of life that you can do as a musician. But the participants here seem to have a wide range of interests, and more than that, are open to hearing about these other ways of doing things in life as a musician.
Yeah, absolutely. I would also say that I've really appreciated just all of the performances we've been able to hear over the course of these past couple days. It's been really inspirational, and it's been really cool to get to know all of you faculty members more personally and just kind of make those more intimate one-on-one connections. And I really, really appreciate that about the Decoda Festival. So that's just one more thing, but
Oh, are there any early mentors or experiences that really shaped your path as a musician? I know that you studied with Benjamin Kamens in grad school, but I've never really heard about who you studied with prior to that when you were in Massachusetts.
Yeah, to go back to my earliest influences, I would mention I have a twin brother. He's also a musician, and we came up together sort of with that sibling thing where we got along well. We were each other's best friends, but there was also a bit of that competitive thing where if one of us would do something, the other had to sort of check and make sure that we could do it equally as well, if not a little bit better. So we ended up following the same track in a lot of ways, but both of us were really, really into 50s rock, Motown, 60s rock when we were very young. And I think from a very young age, we knew we wanted to be musicians, but we wanted to be rock musicians. And then when we got the chance to start really learning an instrument, which happened in third grade when they started offering strings at our elementary school, it was so cool to sort of learn about the mechanics of how the instruments actually work that classical music pretty quickly became a viable and obvious career choice. So I think we knew pretty early on that we were going to be musicians. So that was my first major influence, was my brother and us sort of learning from each other. My first bassoon teacher, Laura Prescott, was a freelancer in the Worcester area where I grew up in Massachusetts. And I really appreciate that she was giving me music theory lessons. She was making me analyze my etudes that I was playing out of the Weisenborn book when I was in 6th grade already, having to identify sequences, saying what chords things were. And she would also take me to museums when there was an interesting art exhibit or something like that. It was just a very a rich start to music lessons and really well beyond what's expected of a first music teacher. She also encouraged me to compose, which I really appreciate, and tried to find opportunities for my music to be performed. The exact same things I would say about my high school bassoon teacher, Jana Underhill, who's one of the best bassoonists in the Boston area. And she was telling me constantly, I do not see you as an orchestral musician. I see you doing a lot of other things. Please just wait. Please just... And she said to me, she discouraged me actively from going to a conservatory for my undergrad education. Looking back now, and maybe we'll talk about this a bit later, I think you can get absolutely exactly as rich an education at a conservatory as a university. You have to be a little bit more proactive about it. But hearing her say those things really rubbed off on me, and I think contributed in large part to me choosing to go to university instead for my undergrad. But she also gave me some of my first opportunities to hear my music performed live. And that was an overwhelmingly positive feeling, and a feeling that I wanted to chase forever, and I never, ever get tired of. If I have a performance of one of my pieces coming up, I feel like I always have something to look forward to. And it's one of the major reasons that I'm so committed to this creative workshop work in other settings, is that I would love for as many people as possible to have that feeling of hearing their music being performed in front of an audience. There's nothing quite like it.
I never really knew that you had studied with two prior people before. That's amazing. Wow. Through your undergrad, who'd you study with? I
had two bassoon teachers in my undergrad. One was Rick Ranty, who was in the Boston Symphony. He was the associate principal. And he was what I would call a relatively conservative musician. Didn't play a lot of new music, but I learned a great deal from him, especially about musicianship. But he didn't want to talk about reeds. He didn't really want to do etudes. So at a certain point, I said, would it be okay with you if I split my time and every other week I'll come and see you and we'll work on musical stuff and excerpts and it'll get me ready for grad school and whatever else. And the other weeks, I'll go study with this other guy who's willing to teach me reeds. And he was like, that sounds awesome. Let's do that. Because it sort of absolved him of responsibility for my reed making and what have you. And the other guy was Ron Artunian, a wonderful person and great bassoonist who is a freelancer. He played frequently in the Boston Symphony, and he had no interest in having a full-time orchestra job. And that was inspirational to me as well. So he showed me the basics of reed making, but it wasn't until I got to Rice that Kamens really demystified the whole process and gave me sort of like a fundamentals education that I feel like, honestly, I never really got in my undergrad. And it's sort of a miracle that I got into Rice at all. It happened that the month before my audition, I was subbing in the New World Symphony in Florida. And there was this bassoonist there who was playing also that I met at the Aspen Festival. He was a little older than me, a sort of gruff guy. I looked up to him. I told him I had a Rice audition coming up. He was like, cool. What Milde etude are you playing? And I was like, I'm not playing any Milde. I'm playing this other more sophisticated stuff. He was like, oh, no. You gotta play Milde. So I spent the next month just practicing this etude. I was like, this is going to be the best Milde Kamens ever heard. And then in my audition, Kamens knew I really, really wanted to go to Rice. And at the end of my audition, he said, hearing you play that etude that way, along with the enthusiasm you've shown for coming to Rice, well, we'll just see what happens. But I knew when he said that I had a fighting chance of going there. So it was very good luck and here's just a classic example of the people you meet at a music festival. You're going to see them again over and over. And they're the people that'll help you along the way, give you the advice that you really need. But yeah, Kamens was a major mentor for me. He did not like new music, and it was in grad school that I discovered my deep, abiding love for super abrasive avant-garde classical music. So we were at loggerheads a lot, but in a really good and healthy way. And it was the composers at Rice that were my sort of additional mentors, just people to talk to.
Sweet. So how would your journey be different if you did do bassoon in your undergrad, since you just did a general music degree at Harvard?
It's a really good question that I think about sometimes, but not too much, because it's sort of a pointless thing to consider. This is just what happened. I don't know. I mean, it is possible that either I would have gotten bored and transferred somewhere else. I mean, I wasn't ready to stop learning like some math and whatever, philosophy, social sciences when I graduated high school. I still had a feeling like I've got more to learn in this arena, but I might have gotten better at bassoon faster. And at that time, I really did want to be an orchestral musician, and I might have become one. But I've met a lot of interesting people who got good orchestral jobs and then left because they wanted to do other stuff. So maybe something like that would have happened to me. The thing I wonder more is what would have happened if I had gone in whole hog on composition instead of bassoon.
I was just about to ask that, yeah.
Because they were competing interests for me. But when I was in high school, when I did festivals, it was always on bassoon. I didn't really have a super strong resume in composition leaving high school. So I thought, I'm going to try to get into the best school I can, focusing on bassoon, and see what happens. And then I ended up going to a school with no bassoon program at all. So it was sort of a moot point. But I loved my time learning about other stuff. I took a lot of courses in literature. I kept up a little bit of languages and things like that, all while insisting on not going to class until I had played long tones. So I was late for every class freshman year. I was unwilling to go until I had played some long tones.
I wanted to ask how you think, like you said, your social science education and things like that have influenced your musicianship and playing music and composing music. If you think there's any cross correlation that people can benefit from in those areas.
I remember when I was trying to choose a college, I was calling some mentorish people and saying, like, should I go to Boston University where there's a conservatory and I can really focus on bassoon? Or like Eastman was another school that I was considering. Or should I go to Harvard? And one thing that somebody said offhand that really stuck with me is, well, everything you learn is going to have an impact on your artistry in some ways. And it took me a lot of years to see how that was true, because while I was there, there really was not a lot of like immediate correlation between a class like, a fascinating class like, okay, we're going to read the whole Bible in this class, and we're going to approach it completely as literature, as an anthology from a historical standpoint. That was fascinating to me, and I ended up taking a lot of other religion courses because it was so curious to me. But it had no direct bearing on my bassoon playing really at all. Years later, when I would get a commission for a piece and be thinking like, okay, what should this piece be about? I would think like, well, there were all these subjects that I studied in school. So they did come up eventually. More than that, I just feel like a more interesting person and more engaged with the world around me, having gone in depth on some other subjects and meeting some of these great minds in other fields. And there was a lot of inspiration in just seeing like the kind of dedication it takes to get like to the top of your field. And I feel like I'm still aspiring to be like those scholars that I met during that time.
Okay, transitioning to a completely different direction. I wanted to ask you your approach to teaching artistry. I've gotten to witness it a little bit over the week, and I think it's quite unique to other classically trained musicians that I've met, not only due to like your compositional elements and your interactive prowess in presenting programs, but just the way you carry yourself when we're at these concerts and at these events and how you choose to interact with the crowd and your timing in doing so.
Good question. I don't know exactly like the most important elements, what they are for being a teaching artist. It's something about being interested in people and being a genuine person. I think a lot of musicians struggle with anxiety and feeling like a weirdo, and I am one of those people. And one thing that I discovered took me a long time to learn, and some weird life experiences to learn them, but I'm very comfortable, maybe most comfortable with people a little bit on the fringes of society. I feel like I come to life and can speak with them in a way that feels like, sort of like my most true self. So homeless people, people in prisons, people that are in our community, but sometimes that you're just not seeing. I just tend to get along with those people, and it's fun to make music with them. So it was sort of just a gravitational pull. And I know this wasn't exactly your question, but I never, ever predicted that I'd be spending as much time in prisons as I do, which is sometimes up to 3 days a week, which is about, honestly, the maximum amount of time that I'd want to be in a prison, because it is a terrible place. Most prisons are grimy, dirty, demoralizing, even when you're doing something positive. But doing that work, I just found myself, without even realizing it, just saying yes to more and more of that work. And it wasn't because, like, there wasn't other stuff to do. it was just the kind of gig that I was finding myself preferring accepting.
And going between your three chunks, as you described, with bassoon performance, teaching artistry, and collaborative things like this, I think I got them.
And composition.
Composition, yeah, of course. How do you think, have you gone through seasons of focusing on one more than the other, or how has that kind of progressed and developed?
Absolutely, it's seasons. Yeah, I think there are some people that can keep up all three of something like that at the same time, and there are weeks where I have to do all three, but it's usually like a season focusing on one thing or another, and you hope that the season before where you were focused on the other thing, you sort of have enough like acorns stored up for the winter that you can carry through. Like I just finished a season of just thinking about bassoon, doing very little composition, one or two pieces here or there. And I'm getting that hunger again. It's like, it's time to be creative. If I neglect any of them too long, life feels out of balance and I start shifting it towards the other thing until that thing starts taking over, and then it needs a rebalance. So it's always moving a little bit this way and that way. And there is a danger there. The danger is that you'll never like reach the peak of what you can do in any one of those three fields. And that may be true. That may be reality. Like I do think if I did nothing but bassoon, I would probably be better at bassoon. And I'm fine with always aspiring to be a little better than I am and keeping the other things up in the air as well. Because I think I would just be less happy if I wasn't doing those other things to the best of my ability.
Great. Thank you so much. Now, shifting gears to chamber music, what advice would you give to students about playing chamber music with people they might not have interacted with ever before and just getting to know them in that introductory period?
Chamber music it's about who you are as a person, because every choice you make happens in rehearsal with the music. If you're in an orchestra, you can just show up and know that you're going to be told more or less what to do. Of course, you want to show up ultra prepared and with a point of view, but somebody might alter that point of view, and you're kind of powerless to fight against that. It's the benevolent dictatorship model of music making. Like, you can be as convincing as you want, but if the conductor says, that's a great idea, but it doesn't fit into what I'm doing for the whole shape of the piece, then you have to follow that advice. Chamber music, it's always a conversation. There's not, and there should not be, one person dominating the conversation. So the thing that's hard to do and really just comes with practice is navigating personality types that you're encountering for the first time or that you've never been in a difficult situation with. You learn as much about conflict resolution and diplomacy in a good chamber music group as you do about articulation and how to stay in time. And I'm not sure there's any real advice to give besides there are other valid viewpoints besides your own, and it's to your direct benefit to learn that as soon as possible and to be open to it. And to say to yourself, especially as a bassoonist, if you are going to play a lot of chamber music, you're going to play the same piece a lot of times. I've played Beethoven's septet countless times. I've played L'Histoire du Soldat more times than probably any other piece. So that's comforting, because if somebody wants to do it a different way, you say, why not? What's the harm? This is not going to be the last time I play this piece. I mean, eventually there will be a last time you play the piece, but let's not worry about that right now. What's the big deal? Let's try it your way this time. Who knows? Maybe I'll like it better. And it's, it's more fun that way instead of playing it the same way every single time, even if you're so convinced that it's the right way. And if you have a right way in mind, that's great too, because you might be in a group where the rest of the members feel lost, and then you can take that leadership role and they can try it your way.
Yeah. I kind of want to circle back to when you were talking about more of the jail setting. Can you go deeper into depth about what your experience has been like going to these prisons multiple times a year, multiple different prisons? What has that experience kind of been like? And why do you make an effort to go to so many in a year?
Yeah, maybe it would be helpful to give just sort of a postage stamp overview of how I got involved in the work.
Yeah.
So I mentioned Ensemble Connect placed a high priority on giving opportunities to do things in community settings. And I had done a couple of songwriting workshops in places like homeless shelters, hospitals, schools, stuff like that. But I had never been to a prison. And Carnegie Hall was using alums of Ensemble Connect for their musical connections program. So long story short, we found ourselves at Sing Sing playing some music by the participants in Carnegie Hall's program there. And that experience was really influential and inspirational on two of my colleagues, one of whom is one of the current artistic directors of Decoda, Claire Bryant. She set up a project along similar lines, a songwriting project, but in her own neighborhood, close to where she grew up, in South Carolina. And we started going there 1 or 2 weeks a year. At the same time, another one of my colleagues, Nate Schramm, who's in the Attack a String Quartet now, began his own nonprofit called Musicambia and set up a sort of sister program to Carnegie Hall's at Sing Sing. So I had two programs going simultaneously with friends. So it was fun to go because they were people that I knew really well, that I respected, and we could do it our way, sort of not under the umbrella of Carnegie Hall, but set it up the way we liked. And after the first project at Lee Correctional in South Carolina, I was just completely abuzz. We were able to record the songs. I was listening to the songs over and over. It was extremely moving, and it's sort of like the same feeling when I first heard my own music being performed. To see people hearing their pieces come to life, playing alongside professional musicians, co-writing things together with people that they didn't really know before that. It was a feeling that I wanted to chase. So I kept saying yes to this work. In terms of why I do so many different prisons, part of it is just that aspect of saying yes to the work, and part of it is curiosity, well, I wonder what prison is like in this other state. So these days, there's a handful of prisons that I do regularly. The Lee Correctional thing is an isolated project once or twice a year, a full week. So we'll go for 5 days or 7 days in a row for maybe 5 to 7 hours a day, writing songs, and at the end we'll have a concert of original music. The Sing Sing project with Musicambia is more ongoing. I go once or twice a month to Sing Sing to offer instrumental lessons, composition advice, mentorship with the musicians there. So both of these programs, I've known the participants now for about 10 years, and it's very satisfying to see how they grow, the new challenges they take on. Sometimes people will graduate, so to speak, and either finish their time or get resentenced and go back out into the world. And it's nice to see how their careers develop and what they do once they're on the other side of the walls. And then some other projects have come up. I lead the project for Musicambia at what used to be called San Quentin State Prison, is now called San Quentin Rehabilitation Center. Among the more progressive prisons. Still a terrible place, but less terrible than some others. Decoda has started another project at Cheshire Correctional that I lead twice a year. That's in Connecticut. And finally, I do a lot of work with Molly Carr's organization, Project Music Heals Us. Molly Carr is another sensational teaching artist. She plays at the highest level. She's in the Juilliard String Quartet, and she has a commitment to this kind of work. So she supports my work for Bard Prison Initiative through Bard College. I guess I'm technically on faculty at Bard, although I've never set foot on the campus because I only teach in prisons for them.
Yeah.
And I teach composition there.
I'm curious what unique challenges you might have faced in the early years at Lee, and how that shaped your approach to going to new correctional facilities across the country.
There are challenges at every place. The biggest challenge is getting in the door. Even if you say we're interested in offering free programming, prisons aren't really in the business of making it easy to provide services for the residents there. And thankfully, I haven't had to do too much of the grunt work of getting in the door, but you have to be very persistent. So that's some of the background work. Inside, I mean, you make a lot of mistakes and you learn a lot of lessons along the way. And I feel confident now that I can go into a prison and get everybody in the room on my side by the end of the first day. Now, that's for projects with self-selected participants, people that want to be there and most often have essentially, in prison terms, earned the right to be there through good behavior and things like that. And we've had great musicians that are suddenly not in the program anymore. They have some infraction, they get in a fight, whatever. Things happen. This is life. You got to live your life even if you're in prison. But there are some patterns that emerge. First of all, that there's talent everywhere. You can count on there being somebody that plays drums anywhere from pretty well to, oh my God, that's amazing. Same with guitar, same with bass, same with rapping, and usually with singing as well. So a challenge would be at a place like Cheshire Correctional, where it's a brand new program and they haven't had music in a very long time. And it's a building program. Like the first year, there were not so many great singers, but then word got around about the program and some of the other musicians that were in the facility join the program, and that kind of thing rubs off on the other participants. They start working together even when the program's not going on. So the program's improving even when we're not there. There's a weird thing where oftentimes there is a kind of musical leader who struggles to be kind of on equal footing with every other participant in the program. And this is not unique to prisons. I see it in any creative workshop and even among colleagues. If you are used to being in charge, it's hard to sort of be in a group as equals with everybody else. And sometimes those people kind of get very frustrated and go through this transformation process where they have a little hissy fit and then come back the next day humble and ready to work. And it's happened so many times that I think it must be part of human nature. And again, that's not specific to prisons. That's just something that happens around the globe. There's a challenge in the difference between prison work and jail work. A jail is a place for people that are either awaiting trial or serving short sentences, less than a year. So if you're in jail, it's a very transient population. So you don't see the same people every day. It's hard to build a rapport. Certainly if you come back the same time next year, it's going to be completely different people. But it's also a really chaotic and disorganized system, at least in New York State. And it promotes people being frustrated, people being angry, people being confused. You're in a state where you genuinely do not know what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day. And I would say the same thing about juvenile justice. There's a tendency for young people that are in the justice system from my experience to not quite understand just how severe of a thing it is and how easy it is to stay incarcerated or to return to incarceration once you've done it once. Those projects are genuinely challenging, and it's hard to build trust. It's hard to build rapport. I like going to Rikers Island and doing a concert. That's fine. People will come in, they'll be into it. But to do something creative requires trust and buy-in that's just more challenging in those situations. That's why, a little selfishly, I prefer maximum security prisons. People there are ready to take on a new challenge by the time they sign up for a program. Even the young people, if you're in a maximum security prison, you get it. You get the severity of your situation. You might be looking at a 25-year to life sentence, and you're ready to work with somebody that's coming in and saying, let's work together on something like that. So I find those projects more fulfilling, and I gravitate towards them.
I guess I would have a follow-up to that, but that was all very great information, and I'm glad I got to hear that. In our town halls this week, you talked about how in the recurring projects you've had, how much the participants look forward year after year to you guys coming back and things like that. And I was wondering if you had noticed possibly any downstream effects. I know this isn't in Decoda's goal, but of improved behavior among inmates, knowing that you're going to come back the next year to do this, so then they can have, as you said, the privilege of participating in these programs.
That's such a great question, and thanks for saying that, because it reminded me of another challenge, which is the danger of going once a year to a place. I think after a few years, people start getting it, and they have patience between times, but there's a danger of doing harm in any kind of community work if it's not approached with great care. And I know we talked about this at that town hall, but it really haunts me, this thing this guy said. He was a return participant, and during our introductions, when he was introducing himself to the rest of the group, he said, "This is for all the new guys. This is going to be an extremely bittersweet week. It's going to be a huge injection of love and positivity. But next week, these guys are going to be gone, and you have to prepare yourself for the letdown you feel when that happens." In terms of that kind of behavior thing and recidivism, like, do people that get out, are they less likely to go back to jail if they've participated in music programs? I think the answer to that is as varied as there are number of people. It depends on the person. It's like anything else in the world. People are going to do what they're going to do. It would be helpful to have hard data that proves that music just generally improves people's lives. And I wouldn't be doing this work if I didn't believe that. And we would get a lot more grants if we could prove that that was the case. But it's not always the case. And, you know, everybody's human. We make mistakes in prisons also, and everything doesn't always go your way. Everybody's just doing the best they can all the time. I think at its core, music provides temporary relief from the dehumanizing conditions of prison. And if that's all we give, then that's good enough. That's something, make somebody's life better for a couple of days. Even better if they have a song to look back on that they've written, because that lasts for a lifetime. Like, nobody can take that away from you. And a lot of the songs, I would say we've had some smash hits. Some of the songs have these phrases that are useful for me, that I'll sing to myself in hard times. You get a lot of inspirational music because people want to write something inspirational when they have their chance to hear their song up on a stage, played by professional musicians in collaboration with their peers in the program.
Yeah, I want to hear the rest of those Paul Cortez quartets. Those were really cool.
Oh yeah, those are great, but let's not discount the quality of the rapping and the singing that we get out of some of this stuff also. Some of it is just world-class stuff.
I would love to transition into another big part of your career in life. Your composition, I know it's a big part. I've played a couple of your pieces so far. I've played Arboretum, which I adore, and we premiered your violin concerto at the Peabody Institute. So just generally, like, I know this is a pretty hard question to ask because so many of your works are probably unreleased, but how many pieces have you really composed in your lifetime? Could you give us a number?
I cannot. I can't give a number. It's a lot. Some pieces I work really hard on for a long time, but I also love writing occasional pieces for a specific purpose or arrangements for something. And a lot of that music has gone to Decoda, especially for situations like we have a super weird combination of instruments this week. We have literally 0 pieces from the repertoire. So a lot of people in Decoda are composers and arrangers, and we lean on these members to make that work. I would say the number of pieces that I'm really proud of that are out in the world that I sell to people is probably numbers between 30 and 40, something like that. That's my guess.
Nice.
It's a good question. I never really thought about it.
Out of all these works that you have composed, is there one that really sticks out to you? I know you really love Arboretum. Every time we play, I can always see your face light up, and it's amazing to see. But do you really have a favorite composition that you just love? There's something that you just like completely adore.
I do. There's 2 of them, and it feels so like toolish to say like I love this piece that I wrote, but I cannot deny it. There's 2. They're both chamber pieces. One is a quintet for piano and winds, same combination as the Mozart quintet.
Uh-huh.
And it's a very abstract work. It's one of my few pieces that doesn't have an outside inspiration. It's just the sounds. And the other is a wind quintet that I wrote for a group called City of Tomorrow that was inspired by virtually the place that we went the other day. I took John and Nick up in the Blue Ridge Mountains a couple of days ago, early in the morning with some of the other participants. We were mostly listening to the birds because it's such an amazing soundscape up there and the scenery and everything. This was a spot on the Blue Ridge Parkway, not more than a mile as the crow flies from where we were walking around. And it was the soundscape that I wanted to put into music along with sort of the sound of the scenery as I imagined it in that kind of John Luther Adams way, who's one of my heroes. I love that piece to pieces, and there's no way to explain it because I think other people are like, yeah, that's cool, but I'm not sure they think of it as the best piece. I think it's something about the experience of being in those woods, and because it's intimately related to birds, which is the 4th chunk of my career, the part that I make 0 money from, but that I spend some seasons almost as much time on as the bassoon.
I love that you brought up the birds because so many of your pieces are inspired by these birds, from at least what I know. Do you have a favorite bird?
I have 2 answers for that. If I had to pick a single favorite, it's the catbird, the gray catbird, the most imaginative and creative of all the North American birds, in my opinion. It's like a mix of Ornette Coleman and Elliott Carter in that it never repeats itself. Or if it does repeat itself, it's on such a large loop that we don't perceive it. And it's one of the mimics, so it scatters in a lot of sounds that it learns from the world. There's 3 great mimics in North American birds. If I can soapbox about birds for a second.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
There's the mockingbird. The mockingbird sings the same thing 7 times in a row. And you'll hear it around here. It'll go like, beel it up, 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 beel it up. Brow, 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 brow.
Yeah.
It's super groovy, super cool. Then there's the brown thrasher. That's the one we met at Lake Powhatan last week.
Yeah,
Great bird.
That was a great bird, yeah.
Sings
Very
everything twice. Badow, badow, shakaji, shakaji, rara, rara. Then there's the catbird. Never says the same things twice. Bill it up, ring, bill it up, It's just so cool. And it's such an endearing bird. It's comfortable around people. Some of them will eat out of your hand if you're in a place where that's a common thing. So that's one of my answers. The other is warblers as a group. There are like 30 or 40 species of North American warblers, and I love them all.
Wait, I have a question about the catbird specifically.
I was going to talk about the catbird actually. What's it called? I remember you just saying the sounds that those catbird makes really reminds me of when you played your solo piece, Gray Catbird, at a studio recital, and I still have the recording in my Mac, and I listen to it every now and then. It is one of my favorites of yours compositions.
That's kind of you.
It is so cool.
That piece is just the song of the Gray Catbird slowed down 8 times and transcribed as close as I possibly can on the bassoon. And then, because it's a tone poem, you'll get like the robin, and then the sound of the leaves, and then like big long catbird solo.
Great.
Okay, my question is a completely different vein because of how you described the catbird's sound. Does anyone nickname it the scatbird?
Ah, well, that's very good. I've never heard that before. That's excellent. It's called the catbird because it's like all birds have a song and a call. And the call is the short thing that they do when they're in the bushes, when they're alarmed or trying to get their partner's attention. And the catbird goes, meow. Strange but true. But yes, I would say these days I have 3 major influences on my composition, and one of them is birds in general. One of the hardest things for me is coming up with like the raw material. It's always what takes me the longest. Once I have all the things, the building blocks, writing goes very fast because I love arranging. And once I have all original pieces, I feel like I'm arranging somebody else's stuff and I know what to do with it. But coming up with the material can be very time consuming. So using birdsong is an amazing shortcut because first of all, if you slow it down, like it's not going to sound like birdsong anymore. And just the process of writing it down, you're going to put your own twist on it. And it's this source of kind of like universally accessible folk song that's indigenous to the land in the truest sense, in that like these birds grew up on this land and they have this song that they sing and they've been singing for generations and generations. And they don't mind if you borrow it. And it'll sound different the way you write it than anybody else. So I learned a lot from Messan about how to do this. And some of my earliest bird pieces were model compositions. Another of my favorite pieces is Another Wind Quintet, where I took a Messan piano piece, just retranscribed all of the bird songs that he did, but in my style, exactly the same length, exactly the same order. And you get away with it because it sounds completely different.
Wow.
But borrowing the form from an acknowledged master like that, it's like, why have I just not been doing this from the beginning? Turns out everybody does it. Like Ravel says the second movement of his piano concerto is so closely modeled off of a Mozart piece that he was shocked that people didn't pick up on it right away. But still, people argue about what piece it is because you can't figure it out.
I would love to talk about Arboretum just for a little second. Where did you get your inspiration for the stopwatch when it came to Arboretum?
I'm trying to remember exactly what the inspiration was. I think it was because I was envisioning a piece where people would be far enough away from each other that they couldn't follow a conductor and maybe couldn't even hear each other. I had already written some bird pieces, and Mike Harley, the bassoonist who's at University of South Carolina and has a program called New Bassoon Institute. He's awesome, and what an amazing player. And he plays in a group sort of tangentially with my wife, a new music group called Alarm Will Sound. But he asked me for a piece for this new Bassoon Institute program, and I was trying to learn how to ID trees by the bark, because I tend to only get really interested in trees in the winter because there's way less birds around, and I'm like, okay, gotta look at something because I gotta be outside. but the trees have no leaves. So I was trying to learn it by the bark. So I had trees on the brain. Anyway, the stopwatch was sort of a practical choice because I wanted the harmonies to change at the same time, and that was the way. The wind quintet I mentioned as my favorite piece that I wrote also uses stopwatches with just 5 people all in the same room. And that was because I was trying to figure out how John Luther Adams got these irrational rhythms that sound so natural in a piece like Become Ocean or Become River, or my favorite piece of his, Lines Made by Walking, which is a string quartet. And I could have just tried to find the score or asked somebody in Jack Quartet to send it to me, but I wanted to try to figure it out. And I thought a stopwatch would be a good way, and it is. And that's why I love the piece so much. It's exactly what I want, which is everybody playing as very, very naturally and organically, but with a result of rhythms that you couldn't write down without super irrational rhythms, the interaction between the lines. And you get some of that in Arboretum as well.
Was that your first time using a stopwatch in a composition?
Arboretum was,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and for a while I thought, that's so cool. I'm going to use this for every piece from now on. But I've come to learn that there's a time and a place, and that I still also enjoy writing music where everybody's on the same grid. Like, there's still a lot of power in that.
And did you write Arboretum in a similar time frame as Swamp Forest that we heard the other day? Like the composition year? Like was it?
Oh yes,
like
that was
in
my
your period
second stopwatch piece.
Okay, yeah.
I have 3. First
Okay.
Arboretum, then the Swamp Forest, and then this wind quintet, Tanbark Ridge.
Yeah, I was curious since you said that you like were really inspired to start using it more and more, and then you went back to a more traditional form.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I want to see how small of a group I can get and have it be a stopwatch piece. Like one person, that's sort of pointless, right? Because
Yeah.
like you can do whatever you want. But could you have an effective stopwatch piece with 2 people? Or at that point, is it like, okay, just write out the rhythms? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that sounds really great. I know we had a ton of fun. At least I had a lot of fun doing Arboretum here at the festival. So it was really great to be able to perform that and have you on standby too, walking around and watching everybody perform your own piece. That was really cool to see. But as we're kind of dying down in the episode here, I want to ask 2 final questions for you. What is one piece of advice you want students to take away from this episode or in general? And then if there are any references or books that you would recommend students go check out.
Sure. In terms of advice to take away, I hope I've been making a compelling case for what I've been calling the portfolio career, which is that life is large and there's room for many things, including things outside the world of music. And you can do those things and still keep your playing at a very, very high level. It may take a little bit of discipline and or planning in your time if you want to sort of keep everything up. But more generally, that the world of music is wider than orchestra and even wider than orchestra and chamber music. I would say that there's great satisfaction from getting out of your own bubble and out into the world beyond what we see every day, going to neighborhoods that you've never been to before, finding new places and new people to collaborate with. And finally, the immense power of being creative. Not only does it give you confidence as an artist, but it also sparks questions for you when you're performing other pieces. You'll approach other pieces differently having gone through the same process yourself. Like you'll suddenly see that Sibelius was making choices. Like it wasn't handed down to him. He was making choices in a very real way, the same way you are if you're writing a solo cello piece, John, or a duet, your own duet for clarinet and bassoon, Nick, something like that. Then you'll go back to Poulenc and be like, okay, I get a little bit why he did this, or maybe I would have done it differently, something like that. So I think every student should try composing at least once and get it performed too, if you can, because it can be a very transformative experience. And you might just discover that you're really good at it or you have something to say.
Yeah. And then for the people listening, where can they go to find out more about Decoda and more about you? Any websites or socials they can check out?
Sure. Yeah. Decodamusic.org is Decoda's page. You can also look at YouTube. I believe they have a robust presence on Instagram as well. I have a very spotty presence on Instagram. I'll remember it and post a bunch of stuff for like 2 weeks, and then it'll be like 4 years before I do it again. For myself, I have a website, bradballiett.com, that's in desperate need of an overhaul. Hopefully by the time you're hearing this, it will be beautiful. Social media, I am really only consistent on one site, and that's Twitter. I would invite you to check out my page on Twitter. It is 100% bird videos.
But I mean, hey, those are the best kind of videos, you know?
Yeah, totally.
That's why me and Nick have been getting up in the morning.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. I really want to just extend a huge thank you to Nick and John for being my co-hosts tonight. And especially you, Brad. Thank you so much for being on this episode. It's been a real pleasure having you.
Thanks for putting this together, and thanks for this podcast across the board, this resource that you're providing for musicians of all ages.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a really fun time. If you or someone you know would like to be featured on Tutti Talks, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us a DM at Tutti Talks Podcast or shoot us an email at tuttitalkspodcast@gmail.com. Make sure to follow us on all social medias and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. We've got guest spotlights, behind-the-scenes content, and plenty more musical conversations coming your way. If you enjoyed today's chat, spread the word, whether that's with a fellow musician, a friend in your studio, or someone who'd appreciate these discussions. Every share helps grow this community and reach more people in the music world. Thank you for tuning into Tutti Talks. Keep the music playing, keep the conversation going, and we will see you in the next one.